Greetings and welcome to Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is going to be different than the previous chapters because we're no longer using ordinary language. We're no longer using sentences that are easy to understand. Instead, we're going to begin symbolizing things. And what that means is, basically, instead of having words, we're going to take everything and put it into symbols and then evaluate the symbols. The reason is that when trying to judge validity, we have this difficulty in that validity is oftentimes, the way we judge it is a counterexample method. And sometimes if you have true premises and a true conclusion, even though it may be a poorly formed argument, it can be confusing to one because, everything is true. And so even though we're telling you, well, let's switch out these words with other ones, the problem is that it becomes difficult to sort of separate that in our own mind. And so what we suggest is take this and simply make everything into symbols. So what we do is the first thing we do is any simple statement like Bob is tall, we simply translate as a capital letter. Instead of the sentence, it's a simple statement, Bob is tall, we just make it the letter B. Bob is tall. Or, Bill is happy, just B. Okay? But we want these to be simple statements. We don't want compound ideas. We want single ideas. If it's like Bob is tall and rich, we would want to translate that as T and R. We wouldn't want to just translate that as B, or Bob is tall and rich. I forget what name I gave you now. But the T and R, because we'd want to separate out the idea that he's tall and he's rich. Because if it ends up being untrue that he's rich, he's just tall, then we have like this idea that, it would have been nice to know that we're not negating the whole entire statement, we're only negating one of the statements. Or we're only proving one of the state parts of the statement false. So what we do is we want to symbolize simple sentences. And we use capital letters for those simple statements. Now, you've also used lowercase letters, but lowercase letters are supposed to be basically placeholders for simple statements and or compound statements. So always use capital letters when you're translating because lowercase letters actually hold the place of more than one thing. So what we use is we have 5 symbols. All you need to learn is 5 symbols. The first one is what we call tilde. It's on your keyboard. It's right next to the letter 1. You use it sometimes in web addresses. And it's just a little squiggly line. If you hold down the shift and the letter left, or the key to the left of the 1, that should be where the tilde is at. Sometimes it's 1 or 2 spaces off depending upon your keyboard. And basically all tilde does is it means not. It's like putting a negative sign in front of it. We just use a tilde because it's easier than a negative sign, which might be confused by it's just a random mark. We call that negation because it's saying not. So if we have something like Paul is rich, and then somebody else says Paul is not rich, we would translate Paul is rich as P, and then we'd put a tilde on it to say not. Okay? The reason why is because if later we have Paul is rich, and then somebody else says later on, well, Paul is not rich, we don't want to have like P for Paul is rich and R for Paul is not rich, because it doesn't show the relationship with them. So we want to, anytime you have a negation or saying something not true, you want to take the thing that is true as a letter and then put a tilde to say it's not true. Now the rest of these, the last 4 are relational, which means they go between ideas or between statements. The first one is dot, and it's just a dot. You can find these if you want. If you go to insert and you'll find characters and you can scroll through and you can find the dot. And if you find it, you can then just highlight it, hit Control C for copy and then hit Control V for paste. And, you can add these ad nauseum. But the case is, you're probably not going to want to actually do that. If you want, you can just use an ampersand. I'm always going to use a dot. If you do it by hand, I'd expect you to use a dot. But if you wanted to use an ampersand, if you're typing this, that's fine. I would understand that as a symbol. So I would allow that. But we still are calling it dot, and we're still knowing it's fulfilling the function of conjunction. And the function of conjunction means that it means it's and. And we use the and to translate anytime you have things like Bob is tall and so is Bill. Anytime you're combining ideas, and it can translate words like and, it can translate words like but. But is saying and, even if it's saying Bill is tall, but he hangs out with people that are even taller. But, you know, from our perspective, it means Bill is tall and he hangs out with people even taller than him. It means the same thing. But from an ordinary language perspective, we realize but is saying the part after this but is going to be something you don't expect, or something that's maybe a little out of normal. But the but, really all it means is and. And so we can translate but as and. We can translate words like as well as, also, moreover, further. Any of these that are combining statements together, we use a dot for and. Wedge. Wedge can be translated or typed in your keyboard with just the letter V. Now, all of this is going to be a lot more difficult to type because of the fact that everything's symbolic. You might want to do everything by hand, the homework, and then scan it, like I told you earlier. The wedge is the V, or wedge. We call it wedge, and it does the job of disjunction. It does the job of either. And so anytime you have an either or statement, this or that, unless can also be the same thing. Bill will be there unless Sue is there. It's going to say Bill is there or Sue is there. Like Bill is there unless Sue is there. It's the same thing. And so we translate that as a wedge. It means or. Now, we also have horseshoe, which does the job of material indication. A horseshoe is like a U on its side. As far as if you wanted to type this and you wanted to figure out an easy way to type it, we usually just say use the greater than sign, you know, the greater than sign in mathematics. It would look enough like a horseshoe. But if you're doing by hand, once again, use the horseshoe. And if you can find the symbol and you want to do that, then I would recommend doing it the right way. But horseshoe that translates if-then, or material implication. It basically, the antecedent, the if part will always be the antecedent, and the then part will always be the consequent. And so you put if A then B would become A horseshoe B, or if Utah wins, U horseshoe Victor loses his fortune. The if-then relationship. Finally, triple bar. Triple bar means material equivalence, and if you want to translate that simply, instead of finding it, you could just use an equal sign, and I would understand that. And the triple bar is going to allow us to translate things that are saying, if this is true, then that's true, and if the consequence is true, then the antecedent is true. It's saying they're both true always. Anytime W is true, then X is true, is what this is saying. And we would say, or if and only if. And so we use triple bar. Okay? I'm going to stop this so I don't run over on time, and I'm going to go through each of these, a few translations of each, before we move along.